The greatest revenge is silence. When you stop fighting, they start losing. Friends, listen closely. I know you've heard it before. Silence speaks louder than words. But do you really understand what that means? When you go silent, it's not about punishing them or trying to make them feel bad. It's about reclaiming your power. Walking away doesn't need to come with noise. You don't have to make a scene or have dramatic exits or send text messages you'll regret. Silence is the strongest weapon you possess. And trust me, their ego can't handle it. Think about it for a moment. When you were always there, responding, giving, explaining, fighting for them, you were playing their game. But when you stop, pull back, and let your absence do the talking, that's when they lose control. You're not fighting, you're not begging, you're simply choosing peace over drama and self-respect over validation. In that moment, you've already won. Silence isn't rejection, folks, it's reflection. Imagine this. You've been showing up for someone time and time again, being their emotional support, their go-to, their safety net. But what happens when you finally step back? When you go quiet and stop being the person who always runs to them, they start scrambling. The ego can't take it. It's like they've been used to a fire always burning, lighting up their space and keeping them warm. But now that fire is out, and instead of feeling relief, they're left in the cold, cold and confused. They never expected this. They thought you'd always be there. They took it for granted, like a warm blanket they assumed would never fray. Now they're stumbling in the dark, trying to figure out how to keep the warmth they once had, and that's a wake-up call they can't ignore. You didn't go silent to hurt them, my friends. You went silent to heal yourself. You went silent because you realized your worth. You stopped begging for a seat at a table where you weren't valued, and now that silence is all the closure you'll ever need. Let me hit you with this truth. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself. Silence is the boundary you needed. Silence is the self-respect you were missing, and their ego can't take it. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that silence means weakness, but nothing could be further from the truth. Silence is strength. It's like the calm before the storm. When everything around you is chaos, your silence is the moment the universe stops and takes notice. It's not passive. It's power in action. It's the decision to stop letting someone's actions dictate your peace. The moment you stop responding, that's when you take control. Here's the thing. They may act like they don't care. They might pretend to move on quickly, post a picture, or show off a smile that's anything but real. But underneath it all, they're panicking because your silence forces them to face themselves. They can no longer blame you or twist the narrative. The ego hates that. It's used to making the story about you. But when you stop playing, when you stop feeding their pride, they're forced to reckon with their own choices. And trust me, that's a lot harder than they ever thought it would be. Here's your power, folks. When you go silent, you stop begging for scraps. You stop chasing what was never meant for you. Instead, you turn inward. You reclaim your peace. You say to yourself, I'm enough. I don't need validation. I don't need their approval. I need me. That's the truth you'll walk away with, and that truth is the real revenge. So let's break it down right here, right now. You are not a backup plan. You are not someone's afterthought. You are the peace they lost when they took you for granted. When you go silent, you're not fading away. You're rising in clarity. You're not looking for apologies or explanations. You're looking for growth, and that growth is all yours. Now say it with me loud and proud. My silence is strength. Write it in the comments. Press the like button and subscribe for more reminders of your worth. Because friends, you don't need their noise to know who you are. You already know you are power, and that's something no one can ever take from you. Number 1, silence is the one thing their ego can't control. Egos crave control, and silence is the one battlefield they can't dominate. Listen closely. If there's one thing the ego fears more than rejection, more than failure, more than even being wrong, it's silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't beg for closure. The kind that doesn't text just to check in. The kind that doesn't need to be seen to know it's real. Silence is the one thing their ego can't toy with, twist, or manipulate. And that's why it drives them absolutely mad. See, folks like this are addicted to reaction. They feed on attention like it's oxygen. The moment you raise your voice, send that long paragraph, or try to explain yourself again, they win. Even if they're losing the argument, they're still in control. Why? Because your energy is still wrapped around them, and your peace is still on their terms. But when you go quiet, when you give them nothing to bounce off of, now they're stuck. Now they're looking into a mirror they never asked for. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a magician on stage. He needs an audience to pull off the illusion. He needs gasps, applause, attention, even skepticism. It all feeds the act. But the moment the crowd gets up and walks away in silence, the illusion collapses. The stage becomes empty, and the power is gone. That's what happens to someone who thrives on ego when you go silent. The show ends, and now they're left standing in their own mess with no one to clean it up or clap through it. Now I know what you might be thinking, but what if they forget me? What if they think I don't care anymore? What if my silence pushes them further away? These questions come from fear, not truth. And fear is a liar with a microphone. It will scream all the worst-case scenarios in your head to convince you that breaking silence is safer than holding peace. But I want to break that lie wide open right now. You're not being forgotten. You're being felt in a way that's louder than any words could ever echo. Because silence doesn't say, I don't care. Silence says, I care enough about myself to stop letting you pull my strings. Their ego, oh, it's screaming because your silence strips it of its favorite weapon, control. And the thing about egos is they don't want healing. They want power. They want the upper hand. They want to know they can still get a reaction out of you, still pull you back into the chaos, still remind themselves that you need them to feel seen. But silence says, I don't need you to see me. I see myself now. Let me ask you something real. Why do you think they always came back the moment you started to move on? Why did the texts roll in when you stopped posting about them? Why did they reach out the second you sounded distant? That wasn't love, my friends. That was ego panic. That was control slipping through their fingers like sand. That was their little empire of illusion crumbling because you stopped playing the role. You stepped off the stage and stopped feeding the narrative. And now they don't know who they are without your reflection. Let's drop another truth bomb. You don't owe anyone the performance of pain. You don't have to cry loud enough for them to care. You don't have to explain every ounce of your silence for it to be valid. You are allowed to go quiet. You are allowed to walk away without making a sound. Because true strength doesn't yell. It endures. It observes. It knows when to speak and when to rise in silence. But yes, I get it. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It feels unnatural at first. You're breaking years of conditioning that taught you love equals effort, noise, fixing, and saving. But the truth is, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is let go without trying to fix what wasn't yours to carry in the first place. Silence feels like surrender at first, but what you're really doing is reclaiming your peace from someone who never knew how to hold it. Imagine yourself as a river, strong, flowing, quiet in some places, roaring in others, but always moving forward. When someone tries to dam that flow, control it, or contain it, you don't need to explode. You just need to reroute. You go silent, you shift paths, and suddenly they realize they were never the source of your strength. They were just standing nearby. You see, folks, silence isn't weak. It's surgical. It cuts clean through manipulation. It removes the noise. It says, I've seen enough, I've heard enough, and I've felt enough. It's Stoicism in its truest form, not cold, but clear, not heartless, but healed. It's not about revenge that hurts them. It's about revenge that quietly, strongly, and unapologetically rebuilds you. And they'll feel it in their bones in the moments when the crowd is gone and the applause is silent. When the phone doesn't light up, when your name isn't showing up in their notifications, they'll start to realize they never had control over you. They just had access, and now that access is revoked. So say it with me right now, because this is where the power begins. My silence is power. Write it in the comments. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that you're done being controlled by anyone else's ego. You're done handing out emotional power to people who only knew how to abuse it. You're not being petty. You're being precise. This silence isn't revenge. This is recovery. And if this is resonating with you, here's another truth. When you go silent, they hear everything you never said. They used to ignore your words. Now they're haunted by your absence. Isn't it wild how they used to brush off your words like they were nothing? You could pour your heart out, spill every ounce of your soul, and they'd respond with a shrug, a sigh, or a half-hearted, okay. They'd act like your pain was dramatic, your emotions too much, your needs inconvenient. And now you've gone quiet, and suddenly the silence is deafening. That's the thing about silence. It's not empty, it's full of every word you held back, every truth you were tired of repeating, every boundary they crossed without blinking. They thought your voice was the problem, but now that it's gone, it's the silence that's screaming. See, people like that never listen when they think you'll always be there. They never value your presence when they assume it's permanent. And when you finally fall silent, not out of anger, but out of sheer exhaustion, they start to hear things differently, not because you changed, but because they finally have to sit in the space your voice used to fill. And in that space, the truth echoes. Let me paint it for you. Imagine a room filled with noise, TVs blaring, people shouting, doors slamming. That's what it was like when you were constantly explaining yourself, arguing, and trying to fix things. But when you step out of that room and close the door, suddenly there's quiet. And in that quiet, they start to notice everything they tuned out before. The things you said 100 times, the things they rolled their eyes at, the things they called too sensitive. Now those things are playing on repeat in their mind, and they can't turn the volume down. You ever notice how the things we take for granted hit hardest when they're gone? That's not just a saying, that's human nature. When you were there, loving out loud, checking in, showing up, they tuned you out like background music, nice to have, easy to ignore. But now you're not a song anymore, you're the silence after the music stops. And that silence, it's haunting. They might not admit it, their pride won't let them. They'll act unbothered, post their little pictures, hang out with temporary people, and distract themselves with noise. But silence is sneaky. It slips in at 2 a.m., rides in on old memories, and shows up in the moment they reach for their phone and realize your name's not lighting it up anymore. No more checking in, no more hoping you're okay, just quiet. And in that quiet, they finally start listening. They'll remember the things you said, how you said them, and the emotion behind them. And maybe, just maybe, they'll realize those weren't just words. Those were warnings. That wasn't just nagging. That was you trying to save something they kept letting die. And now they'll wonder, what did I miss? Why didn't I listen sooner? Was I really that blind? But it's not your job to answer those questions anymore. You see, silence is not just the absence of sound. It's the presence of consequences. It's a mirror. And people like them aren't used to mirrors. They're used to distractions. being comforted after causing chaos, being forgiven before they apologize. But now that comfort is gone. You're not there to soften the blow or clean up their mess. You're gone. And that absence, it's saying everything your presence tried to communicate. But let's be real, it's not easy, is it? Going silent feels unnatural at first. You're used to fixing things, talking it out, being the one who keeps the connection alive. You think, maybe I should explain myself one more time. Or maybe if I said it differently, they'd understand. But here's the truth, folks. If they didn't hear you when you were crying out loud, they don't deserve the whispers of your healing. You are not responsible for the weight of their realization. You gave enough, explained enough, and stayed long after the message was clear. Now your silence isn't cold, it's clean. It's not vengeful, it's vital. You've said what needed to be said. Now let your absence finish the conversation. Let me remind you of something powerful. People don't remember what you screamed at them. They remember how it felt when you finally stopped talking. That's when it hits. That's when it burns. That's when the silence becomes the loudest teacher. So stand firm, my friends. Don't doubt the power of your quiet. Don't think you have to shout to be heard. You don't. Your silence is a lighthouse now, guiding you back to peace and leaving them alone in the storm they created. Say it with me right now. My silence echoes truth. Write it in the comments. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your absence isn't a loss, it's a lesson. And stay with me, because what comes next, that's where the shift really begins. Number 3, their ego wanted you needy. Your peace is the real revenge. They wanted you to need them, but you needed peace more. My friends, this one's going to sting, but you need to hear it. You were never hard to love. They just needed you to be needy. They wanted you wrapped around their inconsistency. They felt most powerful when you were unsure, anxious, and walking on eggshells. That's when they thrived. When your world revolved around decoding their moods, guessing their intentions, and chasing their crumbs of affection like it was a feast. The truth is, they never really wanted connection. They wanted control. And the second you stopped being emotionally available on demand, the second you stopped making your self-worth depend on their attention, they panicked. Not because they missed you, but because they missed the version of you that was easy to manipulate. The one who apologized first, always reached out and tried to explain away their bad behavior just to keep the peace. But now you've chosen a different kind of peace, the real kind. The kind that doesn't come from getting their approval, but from finally giving yourself some grace. You've stopped explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You've stopped offering full-course emotional meals to someone who only brought paper plates and excuses. And that right there, my friends, is Stoic revenge in its purest form. Let me hit you with a metaphor. Picture a circus. You've been the main act for a long time. Twisting yourself, walking the tightrope, juggling your own feelings and theirs, just to keep the show running. They were the ringmaster, cracking the whip, feeding off the drama, watching you dance for their approval. But one day, you simply stop performing. You step out of the ring, pack up your act, and go home. Suddenly, that spotlight doesn't mean much anymore. That applause goes silent because the star left the stage. And the ringmaster? They've got no show without you. They didn't fall in love with your strength. They fell in love with your insecurity, not because they wanted to fix it, but because they could leverage it. That version of you who kept asking, "Are we okay?" after they disappeared for 3 days. That version who asked, "What did I do wrong?" after they gave you the cold shoulder. That version who twisted your truth just to make sure they didn't feel uncomfortable in your presence. But now that version is gone. Now you're grounded, quiet, and clear. No more over-explaining. No more texting long paragraphs just to be left on read. No more confusing anxiety for attraction. No more sacrificing peace just to feel needed. And guess what? They can't handle this version of you because this version doesn't beg, chase, or break their own boundaries just to feel close to someone who keeps moving the goalposts. You ever wonder why they start acting strange when you finally stop reacting? Why they get cold when you start loving yourself more? That's because peace makes ego-driven people itch. They were feeding off your confusion, feeding off your constant emotional availability, and now you're unavailable. Not because you're playing games, but because you've stopped playing theirs. Let's be real, this shift won't feel easy at first. For so long, your nervous system was trained to respond to their chaos like it was comfort. You thought, maybe if I just love harder, they'll finally get it. You confused being needed with being valued. You thought emotional dependency was intimacy, but here's the truth. If someone only feels powerful when you're powerless, that's not love, that's control. The beautiful part is you saw it, maybe not right away, maybe it took years, but eventually something clicked. You looked around and realized this isn't love, it's emotional labor. You were tired, done being the emotional janitor in someone else's mess. And that moment, that was the beginning of your return to yourself. Now they're left with their ego and nothing to feed it, no chaos to thrive in, no anxious messages to soothe their pride, no more power plays, because the thing they never saw coming was your peace. And now you're dangerous in the best way possible, not because you want revenge, but because you no longer need anything from them. You've outgrown the role they cast you in. You're no longer the fixer or the pleaser. You're not the emotional band-aid for someone who kept creating their own wounds. You're the one who's chosen clarity over confusion and stillness over stress. You're the one who stopped showing up to auditions for a role you already played better than anyone ever could. Say it with me right now. My peace is power. Write it in the comments. Show them, show yourself. Show the world that you're not weaker for walking away. You're wiser for reclaiming your worth. And what's coming next? Oh, it's going to make you unstoppable. Stay with me. Number 4, you didn't go silent to hurt them. You went silent to heal you. This isn't punishment, it's preservation. My friends, let's get something straight. You didn't go silent to hurt them. You didn't ghost them to play some game. You didn't pull back to get revenge. No, you went silent because you were done screaming into a void, done pouring energy into someone who only showed up when it was convenient, and done offering warmth to someone who only knew how to play in the cold. This wasn't some grand strategy to make them miss you. This was the moment you chose yourself. Let's break the biggest lie right now. You're not punishing anyone. You're preserving yourself. Your silence isn't petty, it's protective. It's what happens when your heart is tired of being a battlefield. It's what happens when you realize that peace costs more than connection, and you're finally ready to pay that price. You didn't go quiet to make a point. You went quiet because you finally had nothing left to prove. You spent enough time explaining your intentions, defending your emotions, and softening your boundaries just so someone else could feel comfortable in your discomfort. But the more you gave, the less they valued it. And now the silence isn't about them, it's about healing you. Let me give you a metaphor. Picture a house with leaking pipes, water dripping, flooding the floor, making everything soggy and unstable. You've been patching holes, cleaning up the mess, hoping eventually the leaks will stop. But they don't, because the issue isn't your effort, it's the foundation. Eventually, you realize this house isn't safe to live in, so you pack your things and leave. You don't leave to prove a point to the house. You leave to save yourself. That's what your silence is. Your exit from emotional instability. It's your way of saying, I've tried, I've stayed, I've broken myself into pieces to fit into a place that never made room for my whole self. This is not about hurting them. It's about healing the part of you that kept thinking you had to stay to matter. But let's be honest, it's hard, isn't it? That moment when you go quiet feels like betrayal, not to them, but to yourself. Because you've always been the one to reach out, the one to fix it, the one to be the bigger person. Suddenly silence feels like giving up. But I want you to know it's not giving up. It's growing up. It's realizing that peace doesn't beg, that your energy isn't endless, and that your silence isn't cold. It's controlled. Stoicism gets misunderstood a lot. People think it means shutting down, being numb, or turning your heart into stone. But real Stoicism, it's not apathy, it's awareness. It's looking at someone and saying, I understand you, I see you, but I won't keep abandoning myself just to keep you. Stoicism doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared deeply and you still chose to protect yourself when that care went unreturned. And trust me, your silence says more than your words ever could. It says, I loved you enough to stay, but I love myself enough to leave. It says, I'm not here to convince you of my value. It says, I know what I bring to the table, and if you didn't see it, that's not my responsibility to fix. You didn't leave the conversation to win. You left because there was no conversation left to have. They may twist the story, say you ghosted them, say you were immature, or say you changed. And you know what? Let them, because the truth doesn't need defending. You're not available for distortion anymore. You're not arguing your worth. You're not unpacking your trauma just to be told you're too emotional. You're not sitting in circles that make you feel like a stranger in your own skin. This silence is sacred. This is where your healing happens. Not in chaos, not in drama, not in the next apology that leads to the same cycle. No, healing happens here, in the stillness, in the quiet, in the decision to say nothing and let that be enough. So let's burn the lie right now. You're not playing games. You're not being toxic. You're not trying to get a reaction. You're reclaiming your peace. You're creating a boundary. You're learning to sit with yourself and finding out that's the safest place you've ever been. Let me remind you, my friends, silence doesn't mean you stopped loving them. It means you finally started loving you. And that's not punishment. That's power. Say it with me right now. My silence is healing. Write it in the comments. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that you're not going quiet out of spite. You're going quiet out of strength. And stay close, because what we're stepping into next, that's the part that sets you free. Number 5, their reaction to your silence reveals everything. When you stop talking, watch who starts showing their truth. Friends, let's talk about what really happens when you go silent, because that's the moment everything gets exposed. Not by what they say, but by how they react when you stop saying anything at all. See, people can fake a lot of things. Emotions, intentions, even love, but they can't fake their reaction when they lose control of your attention. That's when the mask slips and their truth comes pouring out. And let me tell you, some of it isn't pretty. At first, you might expect grace. You might hope your silence will spark introspection, that they'll realize what they lost, that they'll come forward with honesty and growth. But instead, what you often get is ego panic. An ego doesn't speak with humility. It speaks with volume, with silence of its own, with games, with guilt tripping, with petty posts, half-hearted reach-outs, or radio silence that screams louder than any apology ever could. And all of that, that's just noise. Noise meant to shake your peace. Let me paint the picture. Imagine you're standing on a shore, finally calm after swimming through storms, and from the water, you hear someone splashing wildly, not trying to swim to you, but trying to drag you back in. That's what their reaction is. It's not an invitation for healing. It's a test to see if you'll come back, to see if you'll abandon your stillness, just to save them from their own mess. Don't fall for it. Your silence isn't just a pause, it's a filter. It reveals who's real and who only loved you when you were loud. Some people lash out. They'll start arguments out of nowhere, throw stones at your character, call you cold, distant, or heartless, not because you hurt them, but because you're no longer playing your old role. They can't stand the silence because they've lost the spotlight. They can't manipulate what they can't reach. And when your energy is no longer available for their drama, they panic. Because without your reactions, they're forced to face their own reflection. Some ghost deeper. You go quiet and they vanish, just gone. No check-in, no explanation. And that's not silence for healing, my friends. That's silence used as a shield. Their silence isn't peace, it's avoidance. Don't confuse the two. One is grounded, the other is guilt-ridden. You're choosing distance with clarity. They're choosing distance because they can't stand accountability. And then there's the worst kind, the pretenders. The ones who act like your absence doesn't matter. They laugh louder, post more, and seem unbothered. At first, it might hit you in the chest. Did they ever care? Was I that easy to forget? Am I the only one hurting? But I need you to remember something critical. People perform happiness when they don't want to face heartbreak. Don't let their highlight reel fool you. Behind the scenes, that silence you gave them is echoing in ways they'll never admit out loud. Here's the truth that cuts deep. When someone loses access to your energy and their first reaction is to provoke, disappear, or pretend, they never valued your peace. They only valued your participation. As long as you were in the ring, they had something to fight with, something to use, something to feed their pride. But when you stepped out of the ring, when you stopped explaining, stopped fixing, and stopped begging, they were left with themselves. And that's what they couldn't handle. This is where you grow, because this is where you learn to observe, not absorb. You don't have to react to every provocation. You don't have to defend your silence. You don't have to break your peace just because someone else is breaking down without you. You simply watch. Watch how they show their truth. Watch how they handle losing control. Watch how your silence becomes a mirror that exposes everything their words tried to cover up. And yes, it'll hurt. Watching someone unravel or pretend instead of just owning their actions hurts. You'll want to reach out and ask, why are you doing this? But don't, because your silence is your growth. It's your line in the sand. It's the difference between who you were and who you're becoming. This isn't about revenge. This is about revelation. When you stop talking, the truth starts talking, and you finally get to see people for who they are, not who they pretended to be when they had you explaining yourself every day. Say it with me right now. I observe, I don't absorb. Write it in the comments. Show them, show yourself. Show the world that your silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom in action. And stay right here, my friends, because what we're diving into next is going to unlock a whole new level of freedom. Number 6, you used to chase. Now you choose. The old you chased confusion. The new you chooses peace. My friends, this is where the shift happens. This is where the story changes. Because the old you, the version of you who texted first every time, who over-explained feelings just to be misunderstood, who held on to relationships like they were lifelines instead of anchors, wasn't weak. They were still learning, still hoping, still chasing clarity from people who didn't even know how to be honest with themselves. You used to chase. Let's not pretend otherwise. You chased conversations, validation, and closure. You chased the maybe, the what if, the potential of someone who showed you inconsistency and called it love. You mistook their mixed signals for mystery, their silence for depth, and your anxiety for connection. And I get it. We've all been there. When someone gives you just enough to keep your hope alive, but not enough to build anything real. But now you choose. Now you sit in silence, not because you're scared, but because you're solid. You don't rush to fix what wasn't yours to break. You don't write novels to justify your needs. You don't wait by the phone hoping someone who couldn't meet you in your fullness might suddenly grow into the person you imagined. You don't give emotional CPR to someone who flatlined on you months ago. You used to think love was something you had to prove, that your worth was something you had to argue for. But growth, real growth, shows up the moment you realize that your peace is not up for negotiation. Let me give you something to picture. Imagine a garden. In the past, you'd water weeds, pouring all your energy, time, and heart into something that could never bloom. And you'd wonder why nothing grew. But now, you're no longer pouring into weeds. You're planting roots in yourself. And guess what? That silence, that space, that decision to no longer chase, that's the sunlight. That's the growth. You're not bitter. You're just better at protecting your energy now. You don't respond to breadcrumbs because you're no longer starving for connection. You're full on your own. And that fullness radiates, speaking in your silence, whispering through your boundaries, walking with you in rooms you used to shrink in. You used to beg them to meet you halfway, but now you realize you were doing all the walking. Let's be real. Chasing made you tired, emotionally, spiritually, even physically. Waking up with tightness in your chest, checking your phone, hoping they finally got it, feeling like every day was a test you had to pass to be chosen. And when they didn't show up, you blamed yourself, wondering what you did wrong, when in truth, you were the consistent one. You were the present one. You were the clarity in their confusion. They just couldn't meet you there. Instead of admitting that, they let you chase. But that was the old you. Now you choose. You choose silence when chaos knocks. You choose peace over proving. You choose clarity over connection when connection costs you your calm. This silence you've stepped into, it's not a pause. It's a pivot. From proving to preserving, from explaining to evolving, from chasing to choosing. And every time you resist the urge to send that text, reopen that door, or re-engage that cycle, you're choosing yourself. And that choice, that's where the healing happens. You no longer need to be understood to feel valid. You no longer need their presence to feel whole. You no longer need someone's attention to feel seen because you've learned to see yourself. And that, my friends, is what shakes the ego of anyone who used to count on your neediness. You're no longer reactive, you're reflective. You're no longer proving, you're peaceful. And peace, that's rare. Let's be clear, you didn't become cold, you became clear. You didn't stop loving, you just stopped loving at the expense of yourself. You didn't give up, you grew up, and now that growth, it's loud in your silence, it's calm in your presence, it's unshakable. So say it with me, because this is a whole new level. I choose peace. Write it in the comments. Let it be your declaration. Show them, show yourself. Show the world that the old you may have chased confusion, but the new you walks with wisdom. And keep walking with me, because what's coming next, that's when they start realizing you're not just gone, you're unreachable. Number 7, they thought you'd always reach out. Now they're reaching inward. They expected you to return. Now they're stuck reflecting. Friends, you ever watch someone be so confident, so sure of their grip on you, that they never even consider a world where you don't come back? That's what this moment is. This silence, distance, no text, no call, and no reaching out like you used to. It's not just unexpected to them, it's unthinkable. Their ego wrote a script where you'd always be the one chasing, apologizing, softening, folding. And now you've flipped the entire story by doing the one thing they never saw coming. You did nothing. See, they built their comfort on your predictability. Your love became their safety net. Your responses, your check-ins, your forgiveness, those were the cushions under their carelessness. They banked on your emotional overdraft like there wouldn't be a cost. They thought, yeah, they're upset now, but give it time. They'll reach out. They always do. They counted on your pattern. But what they didn't realize is that patterns break when people heal. And when you went quiet, when you didn't send that, "Hey, can we talk?" text, when you didn't reply to the vague, "Hope you're good" message, when you didn't fold like you used to, even though your heart still remembered the softness, that silence hit them like a brick wall. That's the moment where ego meets reality, because ego lives off assumptions. It thrives on the idea that you need them more than they ever needed you. And now, for the first time, they're sitting in the one thing they were never ready to face: your absence. Not just physical, but emotional. Not just silence, but stillness. The kind that says, "I have outgrown this cycle." Let me paint the picture for you. Imagine them scrolling through their phone, seeing your name in the chat list, but there's no new message, no bubble, no typing animation. Nothing. And that emptiness? It's louder than any argument you ever had. It's not that they don't want you to reach out. They expected you to. Their ego was counting on it. It was part of the plan. But now that plan's unraveling because you're not playing your part anymore. You've rewritten the script. And here's the thing, they might not show it. They won't post a selfie with "I miss you" written across their forehead, but they feel it in the spaces where your voice used to live, in the calm they used to take for granted, and in the storms they now have to navigate alone. That silence you gave them, that's not just a void, it's a mirror. And when people finally stop hearing your voice, they start hearing their own thoughts. They start remembering every time they dismissed your feelings, every message they left unread, every apology they never gave, and every moment they knew you were hurting but chose to do nothing. Now they're sitting with that quietly and uncomfortably, and guess what? That's not your burden anymore, because when someone loses the version of you that stayed too long, tried too hard, and gave too much, they don't just lose a person, they lose access to grace. This silence, folks, is the difference between ego and elevation. You didn't go quiet to punish, you went quiet because you finally learned that love isn't proven by how many times you reach out. Love is proven by how well you protect your peace, even when it hurts. And yes, it will hurt. The moment you realize they're waiting for you and you feel the pull to go back, to fix it, to be the bigger person again. But let me ask you this. How many times did you try? How many times did you send the message only to feel ignored? How many times did you pour out your heart only to be met with silence, sarcasm, or delay? This time, it's not about waiting for a reply. It's about refusing to write yourself out of the peace you finally earned. Because now they're the ones sitting with the weight of reflection. They're the ones wondering what they could have done differently. And whether they admit it or not, deep down they know you were the real one. The consistent one, the soft place, the safe voice. And now that voice is gone, replaced with silence. And in that silence, guilt grows or growth begins. But either way, that's on them. You don't need to rush back to see if they've learned. You don't need to break your silence just to be heard. You don't need to reopen the wound just to see if they'd care this time. Because this version of you, this version doesn't chase. This version chooses. And they never saw that coming. Say it with me right now. I am the one who chose peace. Write it in the comments. Let it be known. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your silence was never weakness. It was wisdom with boundaries. And what we're stepping into next is the moment you stop being a memory and become the lesson. Number 8, Stoic revenge is not about them. It's about you, rebuilding in silence. The strongest revenge isn't loud, it's living well. My friends, let's close this chapter with the truth that most people never realize until it's too late. Stoic revenge isn't about hurting them, it's about healing you. It's not about making them feel what you felt. It's about never feeling that way again. It's not about showing them what they lost. It's about showing yourself what you've gained. You see, the old version of revenge says, "They did this to me, so I'm going to make sure they feel it." But Stoic revenge says, "They did what they did, and I rose anyway." You don't need an audience, a moment of "look at me now," or even their acknowledgement, because the real flex, the real clapback, is when they realize they no longer have access to your life, your energy, your updates, your attention, nothing. Let's get real for a second. They expected a reaction. They were waiting for you to spiral, to lash out, to post vague quotes or sad selfies, hoping they'd check your story. But instead, you did the one thing they can't fight against. You went silent. Not cold, not cruel, just gone. And in that quiet, you started rebuilding, piece by piece, day by day. No announcement, no fireworks, just progress. Let me give you a visual. Imagine a forest that's been burned down, charred, blackened, ash everywhere. Then slowly, quietly, new growth begins. Not loud, not overnight, but consistent. That's you. You're regrowing in the places they scorched, reclaiming your ground, restoring your self-worth, and you're doing it without their permission, validation, or presence. That's the power of Stoic revenge. It's not the scream, it's the silence after the storm when everything is still, and you realize you survived it. You outgrew it, and now you're building something better than what you lost. You're building you. Because what they broke wasn't your soul, it was your illusion. The illusion that you needed their love to be whole. The illusion that your worth was tied to their attention. And now that illusion is shattered, and you, my friend, are standing in the truth. You're not trying to win anymore. You're not checking to see if they miss you. You're not refreshing your phone, hoping for closure, because you are the closure. Your silence is the seal. Your peace is the power. And your healing, that's the legacy. Let's be clear. This doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean you're cold or heartless. It means you've learned that pain is a teacher, not a life sentence. That heartbreak was never meant to harden you. It was meant to wake you, and now you're awake. You're aware, you're aligned. Stoic revenge doesn't scream, "Look what you did to me." It whispers, "Look what I did without you." No drama, no spectacle, just evolution. And yes, they'll feel it, quietly, slowly, in the moments they least expect it, when they realize the version of you that tolerated their confusion has been replaced with one who walks in clarity. When they try to come back to test the waters and realize there's no access to this ocean anymore. That door is locked. That chapter is closed. That light they used to flick on and off is disconnected. Because the truth is, they didn't break you. They just revealed you. They exposed the cracks so you could finally fill them with something stronger than their presence. And now you're not trying to be seen. You're just being whole. So don't post about it. Don't prove it. Don't announce it. Just live it. Let your joy be quiet. Let your boundaries be loud. Let your peace be permanent. And let your growth speak for itself. Say it with me one final time. I rebuild in silence. Write it in the comments. Let it echo. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that you don't need revenge to rise. You just need clarity. You don't need a show. You just need stillness. You don't need to be loud. You just need to live well. And if this spoke to your spirit, if this reminded you who you are and what you deserve, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because this is just the beginning. You're not broken, my friend. You're becoming unshakable.